This is Real Estate Rookie episode 372. Today's guests focus on live and flips and how losing a job didn't even faze them due to the legwork they put in for their real estate investing journey. My name is Ashley Kerr, and I'm here with my co-host, Tony J. Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie podcast, where every week, 3 times a week, we bring you the inspiration, motivation, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. Now, for these guests, we're going to get into how they chose their markets and the kind of nitty gritty of how they got started. But first, Kevin and Julia, welcome to the Real Estate Rookie podcast. Super excited to have you guys on the show today.
Yeah, thank you. This is a huge honor, I think, for us. And we've been listening to you guys personally and Bigger Pockets for a very long time. So we love it.
Many years now. Thank you guys.
Well, now you guys get to give back to the community, which is a goal for a lot of rookies listening. So, Ash and I always say that what makes this show so special is stories just like yours, right? Stories of folks who are just normal, everyday people getting started. And with that, right, we understand that this journey you guys have been on can come with some challenges. So can you share a moment that's maybe had a really big impact on your lives and your investing journey?
Yeah. So, the biggest thing was being laid off from, the quote unquote safe corporate job that, everyone's told you should get out of school. And it turns out it's not so safe, no matter what the job is. So luckily we had some strong, or a strong but mighty, small but mighty portfolio that was able to financially hold us through that time and not put us in any detrimental positions and give me the time to find the job that made the most sense.
What about the other people around you? How are they reacting to you being so calm, cool, and collected, I guess, about being laid off?
Yeah. It was coming from all sides. I think a lot of our family doesn't necessarily understand the real estate or are heavily involved. They're very supportive of it, but they all thought, oh, how are you going to pay these mortgages? We got plenty of questions there. Are you guys okay? And a lot of it comes from a caring place, of course, but it's a question of we're okay. It's like this, the houses are going to keep paying for themselves. Plus we're getting more. I know Julia was getting questions from, her family, everything okay.
It's like, do you need to sell the house or is Kevin depressed? I'm like, Kevin's fine. Don't worry. And we're okay.
It's funny. It's like, this is what, honestly, I want to do real estate full time. I wish I didn't have to go back, to a full-time job. But, so it was kind of a nice, stepping stone to see what it would be like doing it full time.
Tony, you had a very similar experience to this story.
I was going to share the same, right? We're like the band of unemployed brothers and sisters on the phone. Ashley, yours was optional, right? You chose to leave, but like for me, I got let go on Christmas Eve 2020. And I know what was going on in my life at the moment was that we only had, I think, 3 active Airbnbs. We had a couple of long-term rentals at that point. Not a big portfolio by any means. So like, what was going on in your lives when you unexpectedly lost your job?
Oh, well, this is kind of funny, actually. Well, it's sad, but kind of funny. Kevin, it was the day after his birthday. So He got the email on his birthday. Everyone's got to come in tomorrow for this 9 a.m. meeting in person. And, it's just a pit in your stomach all day on your birthday. And then he goes into work. And as you guys heard from the intro, our last name is Windheuser. So Kevin was the last meeting of the day. So he had to wait, in office all day, just knowing that this meeting was going to come. So that was going on at that moment in time.
Yeah, and then at the same time, we just we knew we were closing on our first hard money deal. So we knew that we were in the process, under contract, no contingencies for finances, so we had to close essentially. And so maybe 2 or 3 days later, after losing my job, we were
at the closing table
with a big hard money loan.
Well, good thing you got your approval before you lost your job.
Yeah. Luckily it was, because it was hard money and an independent person, they weren't too concerned. They knew our previous flipping history. So, it wasn't a big deal. To them at least. And we pulled it off. So it all worked out.
And Julia, what were you doing at this time in your life?
As we said, Kevin had this nice, cushy engineering job. Everyone said it was the safe thing to do. So at that time, earlier that year, I did a career change. I had we'd recently gotten married. I had left my job and I got asked to, co-found a software company with a former colleague of mine. So that's what I was working on. No income coming in, but really, hustling between the real estate and making that work out. So, it was a big lesson learned not to rely on the corporate empire, and why it's important to really build out your own wealth and side income.
Yeah, guys, I think just one thing I want to highlight for all of our rookies that are listening is that there's no job that's safe. Right, like we're recording this in February of 2024, and there's massive tech layoffs happening from all of these big companies that people have dreamed to work for forever. Right. My mom was a state employee. She worked for the government, which a lot of people think is like the pinnacle of safe job. And in 2008, when the Great Recession happened, my mom got furloughed. Right. And, so it's like, it doesn't matter where you work, who you work for, like no job is safe. So the safest thing you can do for yourselves, for your financial future, is to build something independent of your day job, because you'll never have full control over that. But as you build this real estate business, that's something you can control, at least to an extent.
Right. And I hope if there's, one thing that people take away from our experience with Kevin's layoff is that's why having that, real estate, small but mighty portfolio in the background was just so important, and what really stabilized and like our life at that point. Really.
So let me ask you, what did financial stability mean to you? Why would you say that when this happened, you were laid off, that you guys felt, okay, it's not the end of the world? What was your financial situation that you felt comfortable with?
Yeah, I think what was important for Kevin and I as we were growing our portfolio is growing sustainably. We never took on more than we can chew. We always had that element of calculated risk that we were taking on. So that stability during that time is we knew that our portfolio, each house is independent of the whole portfolio, each of them cash flow. We have our reserves personally. We have our brokerage accounts. We really just made sure that we laid the proper foundation before going into that, recent hard money deal that we just alluded to before. So just that sustainable growth over time, I think really helped us.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, you read online or on social media how, they put everything they had into something. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, some people it works out and good for them, but it's a very, very risky situation. So for us, like Julia said, we had our savings, we had a cash flowing portfolio, which included reserves for each of those properties.
And did you have, for your reserves, what did you feel comfortable with? Do you want to share some of the numbers with us as to like what was your monthly cash flow compared to what your income was from your job, and kind of what that difference is and how much you had saved?
I can get into each individual property, but big picture, our total cash flow, at least for principal, taxes, and insurance, so not yard maintenance and things like that, that is about $4,000 of cash flow. And then after that, all our houses are fairly newly renovated, even though they're 100-year-old homes. So we know we have very low maintenance costs in general. We try to keep maybe 10 to 15,000 at all time in the real estate account, just in case your furnace blows in the middle of winter and you need a new furnace,
which happened by the way. This year.
Which should happen.
That happened to me this year too.
Yeah, it's a painful reality, But yeah, so, in terms of numbers, about 4,000. And then that cash flow we also knew could cover our rent. So at this time, we were renters ourselves. It made more sense to rent out all our homes and go rent from someone else. So that cash flow would also cover our personal rent, if needed. It was definitely $4,000 can make it very tight after, food and everything. And luckily we had savings, of course. But generally speaking, that's.
Okay, awesome. What is your portfolio made up of?
So we started with a 2-family home. We used my first time home buyer for that. The second home that we purchased was a single family home, first time home buyer in Kevin's name. And then the third one is another 2-family home. That's just like your typical investor, 20% down. And then the fourth home that we purchased is a single family home with hard money.
Yeah. So total value that it's about $2 million in property. Total revenue is about $166,000, and like I said, $4K in cash flow.
Well, you guys, that is amazing. Congratulations. So where are you investing in right now?
We're in Providence, Rhode Island. And I guess to give further context of how we even ended up there, back in 2019, we were living in Boston, Massachusetts, and we were trying to figure out, okay, we really want to take the jump into real estate. how the heck are we going to do this? So we were looking from everything from all of greater New England. We thought about, oh, well, maybe we'll get a primary residence and rent out there's a barn on the property. We're like, oh, we'll rent out the stables and all of this stuff. We really thought of all the different options, but ultimately we came down to house hacking because we learned about leveraging a first-time home buyer. At the time too, Kevin's job was hybrid, so he needed to be able to commute back into Massachusetts. So when we found Providence, that was only about 50 minutes outside of Boston. So it really worked out perfectly just for our personal life and for our investing journey. And the appeal to Providence really is all our properties are centered around Providence College. So we loved being insulated by the school, 10 minutes from downtown, and so much money went into really building up that smaller city and made it, a really great destination for people. So that's how we found Providence.
Yeah. And I mean, we're big believers in investing in our own backyard or relatively close. We want to be able to see street to street. One street over can make a huge difference if don't have boots on the ground or have someone you trust there. And we didn't have that. So being close by was important to us. Boston was just simply too expensive, for our risk, at least. I know people do it successfully, but for us, it was just a little too much. And then, Providence was a little more in our price range, and rents still justified the purchase price.
Can we talk, like, what was the price difference between Boston and Providence? Like, for the portfolio you bought, $2 million worth of real estate in Providence, what would that have costed you in Boston?
Yeah. So our first property, we bought for $339,000. And then if we were to get a 2-family in Boston, that could have been $1 million easily.
Yeah, about $1 million. And then the rents are a little bit better here, but they definitely don't cover the mortgage.
Right.
Whereas
down there, the rents were high enough to cover the mortgage and some.
So you guys have gone through a few properties now. You've got some single families. It sounds like you did a little bit of maybe of a bigger rehab job with the hard money loan. Of all these properties that you've taken down so far, which house has maybe given you the biggest challenge or presented the biggest obstacles?
They all have their special little, unique thing that makes them a challenge. But I guess probably our first property, we'll say. Yeah, the 2-family home.
And what made that one so challenging for you guys?
You know what it is? Like, new investors on the block. We were 26 years old. Like, innocence is bliss, right? You walk into something and you go, oh, we're just going to paint the cabinets, throw in a shower door, and it's going to be just, lipstick on a pig. And then ultimately we got in there and you're buying a 100-year-old house. The electrical is just dangerous and, plumbing is just old piping, all of this stuff. And we're really big believers in, just eliminating headaches. If we can future-proof the property by doing those foundational upgrades up front, that yielded us a really big return in the long run. So yeah. I would say was probably why it was a big obstacle, but.
Yeah. And we knew it was a 100-year-old house, but I think a lot of people think your inspection covers all of this information. But at least in our area, what we found is the inspector just looks, generally speaking, does the house look like it's going to fall down? They'll make some notes, but they don't look at the detailed electrical. They say maybe hire an electrician to look, and maybe we should have hire a plumber to look. They just tell you to hire a specialist essentially. So just because the inspection looks good doesn't mean much. But ultimately it's a 100-year-old house that needed to be gutted.
So your first project was a 100-year-old home that needed to be gutted. Is that
yes.
That's what you guys are sharing?
That's essentially, yeah.
And we were living in it.
Yeah.
We were living there.
Yeah. No wonder this is the biggest challenge, right? That's a big job to take down on your first one, right? I'm on the West Coast, so that, we don't get as many 100-year-old homes like where I'm at in SoCal as you do on the East Coast. But I know, Ash, I think you've got some stuff that was built the 1800s or something like that, right? So it's more common on the East Coast. So when you think about lessons learned maybe from going through that first rehab, what were some of the big things you walked away with? Okay, we need to do that differently next time.
Yeah, so I took on a lot of the rehab stuff. I went and got my GC license and honestly learned through YouTube University, as I call it, and a couple big things. One, you can learn how to do a lot of this stuff yourself if you want. At the time, we didn't have the money to be able to hire out. And so it was really just on us to do it. I will say though, as we started to collect rent and rebuild our reserves, learning after that project, we learned that, it's just not feasible for us to do everything ourselves. We started to have to hire out certain jobs. I got good at tiling, for example, and I'll still do tiling. But when it comes to drywalling, I'm not a drywaller. I've learned very quickly professionals can do it significantly faster than I can. So that was a big one. And then honestly, every house we look at now, I kind of just go in with the mindset that everything's going to have to be replaced, and if it doesn't, great, we save that money. But it's kind of just preparing for the worst and hoping for the best.
What are 3 things that you think off the top of your head this is what a rookie should know, because these are things that can cost you a lot of money that aren't obvious? Like, are there different things, like how you had mentioned, you get your inspection report, but it's not seeing inside the walls and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, biggest things I look at now on a property is electrical and plumbing. There's a lot of just because it's old electric doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. But when you start to get to 100-year-old electric, it's not just old, but it's unsafe. And then there's issues where the tenant, or if you're living in it yourself, you can't turn the light on and the microwave on at the same time. And that's something you're going to get callbacks or you're going to get
The breaker's going to trip and they're going to say, I have no electric. You're going to send out an electrician and be like, all you had to do is just to flip this.
Exactly. Or some of those breakers we had in that house were before the standard breakers we have now, not fuses, but they weren't safe breakers that we have now. So it may not have even tripped. So just knowing your electric is either in great shape, or if it's not in good shape, getting that replaced. And then a third one, you have a third one, maybe tenants. We luckily inherited a great tenant.
She's still with us too.
She's still with us. But I mean, hearing all the, I guess, maybe horror stories, you never know who you're...
Horror stories?
Yeah.
Who you're going to get, right?
You never know, and I think we lucked out, honestly.
I definitely want to dig into the tenant screening piece here, but I guess one last question on the rehab portion. Now that you've done this a few times, I know a big question for a lot of rookies here is, how do I estimate rehab costs when I've never done this before? So what's your recommendation to someone who's brand new, maybe just like you, they're thinking, I'm just going to slap some lipstick on this pig and we're going to be fine. How can I project rehab costs as accurately as possible?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, the truth is just getting a little bit of experience. You don't have to be an expert, but a little bit. But if you have when I say a little bit of knowledge, meaning you need drywall and spackle, you don't just need drywall, but going through walking the property room by room, writing down. And then on our most recent one, I just went on to Home Depot and added in each room what I needed for that room. And then I doubled the cost just for labor. And then I added it all up. And then I added another maybe 15% on top of that, maybe 20%. And that got me almost exactly to the dollar on how much it costs.
Yeah. Ash, you like that strategy as well, right? Like just filling up your shopping cart.
Yeah. Just going on the website and actually just adding things into there. And actually now Daryl's built out this whole spreadsheet where it just links all of the materials we always use, like especially for apartment turnovers. Yeah. And you can just click, and there it is. But I did want to add too, to how Kevin said, doing the electric and the plumbing, looking at those 2 things are so important, as to there's a lot of little simple things that you can, do YouTube University to learn about. But an example is the breaker box. Are there fuses or are they actually breakers in there in the electric panel box? Because if they're fuses, you're going to want to get those switched out. So being able to, even if you're just taking a photo of some of the things you're seeing in the house and you have no idea this is how it's supposed to be, take the photo, ask your dad, ask your neighbor, just ask somebody, because a lot of times just that photo can say a lot. If you're seeing corrosion or stuff like that around the electric panel, that shouldn't be happening. Then also taking pictures under all of the sinks where the plumbing is underneath too, looking for leaks, going down in the scary basements where they hide the dead bodies and taking pictures of the piping down there. Is it PEX? Is it PVC? Is it galvanized pipe? I once had this property where there was a galvanized pipe coming out of the property and the insurance company wouldn't insure it because they didn't want that type of pipe coming out of the property. So lots of different things that you can slowly learn just by taking so many great photos when you're just doing a showing for a property and asking questions.
Yeah, and I just want to add two things. Like when you're in the basement, and especially with electrical, you can see if someone like stapled the wires up on the beams properly, and if they look like a professional did it. When you see it, you'll know. And something else that we do when we tour properties is we have like this little plug that you can just put into any outlet. It's maybe $15, if that, but it shows if it's GCFI. So you can see if it's, updated electrical or not just from there.
Yeah, it'll tell you if it's grounded or not, which means it may be 100-year-old electric knob and tube or something.
Yeah, James Daynard, when he goes through a property, he always looks at the hot water tank, the electrical panel, the furnace to see if there's a sticker of who installed it or who last maintained it too. And if he is planning to, change the electric or do something like that, he'll contact those contractors first if everything was done, looks good correctly, but if it's not a great job, he knows not to use those contractors too.
So let's talk a little bit about tenant screening, right? We touched on this earlier. So sounds like, I'm assuming Kevin, Julia, you both are self-managing?
Yes.
Okay. So what is your process for screening tenants? Both, I guess, the ones that are inherited, if you are doing any kind of screening, and then if it's a brand new listing that you got to find the tenant for yourself, what does that process look like?
Sure. This is quite funny because we just did this weekend. We had to show a property. But our process typically, and we found that it's been most successful for us, is posting on Zillow. We've done Facebook and all the other things, and we've just found that the highest quality lead for us really comes from Zillow in our area. So what we do is we list the property, great photos, of course, and with a really good description. And we say, okay, someone says, I want to inquire about this property. I just thank them, for inquiring. We have a Google form. Please, fill this out and please send me your phone number. I'll give you a call. So typically from that Google form alone, you're going to weed a lot of people out because some people are like, too much work. I don't want to do this. Or, they're really hopeful that, they're going to fit the criteria. Or sometimes you get lucky and, they're a great qualified tenant. If that's the case, I give them a ring and I say, hey, listen, I know it's kind of weird, getting a link like that, from a stranger that you don't know, whoever this landlord is. I just want to put a face to a name. My name is Julia. I'm going to just ask you a couple questions just to verify what's on this form. And if this both feels good for us, we'll schedule a tour and we'll get you into the property right away. So then if that works out, we schedule the tour. And I try to be as personable as I can during the tour and really make them feel welcome, open up to me. I ask, casually, why are you moving? Okay. Would they be able to give you a reference? Oh, that's awesome. Perfect. Let me talk to you a little bit about the landscaping, utilities, etc. And answer any questions that they have. And then from there, if they're still interested, if I still feel like it's a good fit, we'll do the credit and background check and just verify everything and go from there.
How long does that process usually take? From the time that you've listed until you find a tenant, ballpark, how much time is passing?
It really depends. So for example, just this past weekend, we just went through that whole process with one of our single family homes. We put it on Zillow for maybe it was a day. Sorry. Yeah, it was a day. And then Saturday, they toured it, sent their credit and background check. We sent them the lease and it happened, maybe two days total. Yeah. But we have other houses, that it takes a little bit longer. And if you're off season, so for example, in the Providence area, usually people's leases end May 20th to 31st, somewhere in there, just to give a little lapse in time for turnover. And then new leases start June 1st. So right now is a really hot time to list your property and you'll get, everyone's looking. If you're off market or the leasing schedule, it could be a little trickier.
So one follow-up question for me. I know you said that you guys try and focus around Providence College. So are you going after the college kids? And if so, are they renting by the room, or are you doing full room or full house rentals? How does the college kind of play into your rental strategy and the tenant screening piece?
Sure. So one side of the school is definitely the party side of the school. We are not on that side. We typically get a lot of the graduate students or young families that just, went to the university or just decided to stay in the area because of jobs or what have you. So we have majority young professionals, I would say.
Yeah, and we were open to students. Like that was something we always said, worst case, we could always get students. And I know a lot of people are scared of students, but keep in mind, I mean, at least at this school, a lot of their parents are paying the rents. So, you'll get the rents. And then, so that's great. And then if they party and damage it, you have a good security deposit, I mean, it could obviously be worse, but usually like a hole in the wall I can fix, Yeah,
I think something that you guys seem to have down pat is that you have a system. You know what you need to do for every application that comes in. And that is so important and can make it so easy to make sure you're not violating fair housing laws by sticking to the same, here's my rental criteria. You miss it. Yes, you're approved. No, maybe you need a cosigner, things like that. So I highly recommend it. Anyone listening, if you don't have some kind of rental criteria or a checklist that you follow for your screening, start writing that out and figure out each little step that you need to do. Then it makes it even easier to hire out, to have a virtual assistant to actually do that process for you too.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's a data-driven business, whether, good credit, 3 times the rent for your income, all of that stuff matters. And you really have to detach yourself from the emotional stories that, people are going to tell you. And of course you have a heart, but at the end of the day, it's data driven. It's not personal, and you can't take that personally if you have to turn someone down because, they simply can't afford it or whatever the situation or circumstance that they're in.
So was real estate investing exactly what you thought it was going to be? And why not? Or why has it been?
Definitely not what we thought it would be, but at the same time, I want to say it's so much better in other ways, right? So, I mean, I think social media puts a lot of a facade, we'll call it, over what real estate investing could be. A lot of people are like, quit your 9 to 5, jump right into it, without even thinking. And that's just not reality. That 9 to 5 does help you build your portfolio to a point, but it takes time. A lot of people are counting doors. I have 1,000 doors, and in reality, they're just a part of a syndication, that is great and everything, but it's a lot different than having, 3 doors that, are great cash flowing properties. So I think at first we really wanted to quit our jobs and grow our portfolio as fast as we could to, live that life. But we quickly realized we could get there the same way that other people have, just with having, I guess you'd call it the small and mighty portfolio. And that has worked really well for us. It does get frustrating when, we, in theory, I guess we have 6 doors, 6 units. But that can be just as powerful as 100 doors, depending on the market and so many other variables. Cash flow. Yeah.
I think the social media piece that you mentioned, Kevin, is super important because it's so easy to see kind of this perfect story on Instagram, TikTok, wherever, and think that everything's always rainbows and butterflies. And I hope Ash and I at least do a good job of like sharing our personal ups and downs and failures and things that don't go according to plan. Because it's true that, there's a lot of success that can be had with real estate investing, but sometimes it feels like you're banging your head against the wall, right? And you're like, man, why can't I figure this thing out? So I think for all of our rookies that are listening, it's important to hear those failures because when they happen, now you don't feel like you're someone who'll never figure this thing out. Right. It's part of the journey is those ups and downs, guys. So I appreciate you calling that out. What about like the management side? Like what other, misconceptions have you seen about managing tenants and trying to be a good landlord?
Oh, there's so many. And I might get a lot of, controversial feedback for this, but I really
that's our favorite kind of, controversial stuff.
Yeah. But everyone will tell you online or friends and don't tell them you're the landlord. Just say you're the property manager. Don't say that you're the owner and all of this stuff. But I just find so much value in creating a relationship with my tenants. Now, I'm not saying you got to be best friends. I'm not saying go over for tea and all of this. But when you're involved and you're like being friendly with them, like I care that I provide good housing for you. I care about your job. I care about your dog. I care about your pregnancy. So I remember these things when I talk to them and when I follow up with them, when I see them on the property, I say, oh, like how's your job going? I know you were up for a promotion. How'd it work out? And my tenants really appreciate that. And we always say, we want to, if times are hard for them, we want to be the first bill that they pay. Or if something breaks, I don't want them to be like, ooh, Julia, that scary landlord. I'm not going to tell her this. And then all of a sudden mold is going through the walls. I want them to feel comfortable telling me when things go sideways. So I feel like we have done a really good job of balancing that.
Yeah.
I think it's true for like any leadership position. You know, like I have team members on my team and the kind of the different businesses that we run. And I feel like there's obviously a balance you want to strike there. Like, you know, I think you always want to make sure that they respect you and kind of the role that you play, but you should also respect them and make sure you've got an understanding of what's going on in their lives. And like you said, when that foundation is strong, when issues do arise, whether it's, you know, something that you want to talk to them about that's a little sticky or something they want to bring up that's a little bit sticky, when that foundation of trust is there, it makes handling those issues so much easier. And that's true landlord to tenant. That's true boss to employee. That's true parent to child, right? It's like any kind of relationship, when that foundation of trust is strong, conflict resolution is so much easier.
Tony, real quick, I noticed that you didn't give the scenario of Airbnb host and guest. And is that because Sarah's always zooming in on photos to find out?
We crack the whip when it comes to Airbnb guests. Like, hey, do your checkout instructions, no question. No. I think that relationship's a little bit different because it's so quick, you know, so that's just more like customer service, right? But like, you know, I think about the other relationships and it's that way.
Oh, Tony, I was just going to add, like, I, you know, have a tenant that their lease is up in May, and I had reached out to them because they, you know, whatever the situation, they wanted to extend, but we couldn't. But she at least felt comfortable coming to me and saying, hey, Julia, like, I don't want to screw you over. I know my lease is up on this date. This is the problem I'm facing because of my exam or whatever the situation was. And I said, great. Like, I'm so happy you came to me. So now I can prepare. Okay, now I know that I'm going to have a vacancy. It's not just going to sweep me out from, you know, the rug under me. And I could say, okay, what's your criteria for another rental? If I see something, I'm more than happy to be a referral or send you something that I come across. Or if there's a landlord in that area I can connect with, I'm so happy to do so. And I think when you have that relationship, it, like, that could have been such a headache. That, oh, I want to extend my lease for 3 more months. Oh, you can't do it. And now it's a problem. You know, we completely avoid the conflict that way, you know?
Now, Kevin, after hearing Julia's role, I'm going to assume your role is more like mine, where you're not having to talk to anybody or answer the phone.
Yeah, Julia does a great job with the tenants, and I'm very nice to the tenants. When I am talking to them, it's fine.
They love
Kevin. They love me. That's what they tell Julia at least. But yeah, I would much prefer to be behind Stessa doing the numbers. I'd much prefer doing a renovation or managing contractors or whatever the case is. I love that side of the real estate, but luckily it works in our relationship where Julia likes the other half.
Can you explain what Stessa is real quick? And is there any other software you're using too?
Yeah, Stessa is just your bookkeeping, essentially. You can upload all your receipts. You can send your accountant a big tax packet at the end of the year. You can keep track of property information. I think they just started doing property management as well, or rent collection, I should call it. For that though, we are using Rent Ready. So we're kind of splitting the two. We find Rent Ready right now has a little bit more features for that rent collection. But Stessa still has all the numbers side of things.
Stessa's a nice mobile app too. Like if he's in, you know, buying something in Home Depot quick, he prints up the receipt and just can do it from the car and it's uploaded and done. So.
Yeah. And it helps me keep track, like a renovation project, like almost all these houses have had renovations. It keeps me, you know, accountable for like where is our budget? You know, where did that go? Cause you can categorize each thing. And I'll tell you at the end of the year, our accountant, I'm sure appreciates that it comes in a nice bundle. And I certainly appreciate not having to go back through these receipts, you know, open up a shoebox.
Yeah. I love both of those platforms. And if anyone listening is a Bigger Pockets Pro member, you get access to both of those through being a Pro member. And you maybe have to pay $1, if that, I think, but it might actually be free tied into the Pro membership. But Stessa, I love it because it's also like a asset management tool. So it's not property management software per se, but it seems like they're trying to get there. But like you can track your insurance. And it will alert you, like your insurance is about to expire. Make sure you have renewed it, things like that. So I love it as an asset management tool too, Stessa. And Tony's mind is still blown because Stessa is assets spelled backwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kevin and Julia, what is next for you two?
So we've done the single family, we've done the two family. Well, honestly, listening to Bigger Pockets a lot and getting some inspiration, I think where we're going next is probably something a little bit bigger, but nothing crazy. Call it our buy box is hopefully something in that 8 to 15 unit. We like the idea of condensing the portfolio or not having a ton of single families. I will say single families rent very easily. So if you find a good deal, we're still, open to those. If someone else finds a deal, take it down, if the numbers work, but we want to try and grow into that slightly bigger, property.
And where do you guys see yourselves in 5 years? Do you have any goals set? And it can be outside of real estate too.
We're looking just this week.
Yeah. I have the same problem. It's so hard for me to look down.
You guys have touched on it a little bit, right? Like trying to scale up, which I think is a super fair goal. And I guess when you think about that idea or that goal of getting larger properties, like what's that next skill development that you feel you need to focus on? Because it's like you've got the rehab piece down, you've got the tenant screening piece. What's that next skill that you feel you need to really sharpen to continue scaling up?
I think we're starting this with the hard money, but getting like the private money, getting the maybe hard money, the different creative financing type ways to pull down these deals. Like we don't necessarily have multiple millions to go and buy these huge commercial properties, but I know there are ways to go about it. And many of these ways you guys have brought up on previous shows, and just learning and ultimately executing those for one of these bigger properties. So I think a lot of that's going to come with networking. Finding the deal, of course, can come through networking.
I'd also add that kind of project, I don't believe that we would manage it because it'll probably be out of state. We're looking to diversify our portfolio. So on Saturday, actually, we have a tour in Connecticut. So we'll have to figure out like that outsourcing that property management piece too. So that'll be another skill that we'll have to kind of hone in on a little bit more.
Let's talk about the networking a little bit, right? Because I think that's an incredibly important skill for people to learn, especially as it relates to being able to raise private capital and, maybe taking down some of these bigger deals. Like you said, you don't have millions just sitting in a bank account for yourself. So you've got to be able to, at some point, tap into other people's money. So what does that look like? Like, what's your goal for building that network, for getting out there and meeting potential money partners?
Yeah. So our goal is to go to one meetup a month now that, we're here in Boston, and we like to go in with an intention. So something that we're needing right now is different sources of capital and finding those private lenders. So we'll go to these meetups and kind of, you can sniff out in the room, who's there for what, and really engaging with those people, but also being open-minded to anyone that you speak to at a meetup and how it could, be a symbiotic relationship with one another. So,
well, Kevin and Julia, the last thing I want to highlight is your partnership. You both very well clearly defined what your roles and responsibilities are in your partnership. And I think that's a huge part of what makes a great partnership, is each knowing what you are responsible for, but better yet, actually taking responsibility for it. So Kevin and Julia, thank you so much for joining us on this Real Estate Rookie podcast. I'm Ashley and he's Tony. You can check us out on social media in the link below in the show description, and we will see you guys next time.